which is stand for the Chinese Scholar Student Association. And then, in fact, this is the first time the three body, Graduate House, PGSA, and CSER, work together and organize this seminar together. And obviously, the seminar is on the Big Bang and Genesis. This is, I'm sure, the title itself attracts all of you to hear. So let me briefly introduce our speaker. Our honorary speaker today is Professor Ron Hu, who actually received his PhD at the Imperial College London back in 1987. And previously, he held academic positions in the UK and also in Australia. Presently, he's a chair professor of power electronics at the University of Hong Kong, as well as Imperial College London. That means concurrently, he actually holds both positions at the University of Hong Kong and also ICL. At HKU, he's one of the endowed chair professors, Phillips Wilson Wong Professorships of Electronic Engineering. He's a fellow of two. Basically, the first one is he's a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering in UK, as well as a fellow of the Australian Academy of Technologies and Engineering. So it's not easy to be a fellow, but Professor Hui, he actually has fellowships from UK as well as Australia. So without further ado, let us welcome Professor Ron Hui.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Yang and the supporting organization for hosting this event. The title of today's talk is The Big Bang and Genesis. Now, when I was young in the 1970s, I heard a few debates between scientists and religious leaders about whether God exists or not. And for many years, I couldn't get involved in this debate because I didn't know either science or theology. But in my training as an engineering scientist, I had the opportunity to study physics. And 15 years ago, I deliberately took the effort to study theology as well. And then I realized that in order to have more communication between science and religion, it is important that we understand knowledge on both sides. Okay, so today, what I would like to do is not to give you a detailed physics lecture. What I'm going to do is to explain what Professor Stephen Hawking's book about the Big Bang, because in his two books, A Brief History of Time, he did a very good summary of the different stages of the Big Bang process. And he also, his latest book is called The Grand Design, and he has some new conclusion. So what I would like to do is, first, I would like to explain what he has written down in his two books, so that we all understand what Big Bang is about. And then I would use chapter 1 of the book of Genesis from the Bible to explain what was described in the Bible about creation. Okay? And then I hope we can do a comparison on the two frameworks. Now, before I start, how many of you have read this book? How many of you think you understand this book? Now, this is the most popular book on science, and yet very few people understand what it is about. Okay, so that's why I need to explain it to you first. And today's talk, I actually use a few more material from a few other books. One book is from called the Science of God. The author is actually a Jewish teacher. He teaches the Old Testament. He's also an MIT trained nuclear physicist. Okay, so it is important that we understand from experts who understand the Hebrew language about the book of Genesis. So I will use a few books for today's talk. Now, let me just show you two very short videos about Mars and Earth. Now, this is an animation by NASA. In Mars, the atmosphere is extremely thin because the solar storm from the sun has actually eroded the atmosphere. One reason is that Mars hasn't got a magnetic field. So it has no magnetic field as a protective shield to protect the atmosphere. So that's why the atmosphere in Mars is only about 0.6% of that of our Earth. Okay, so this is a problem. That's why Mars is not suitable for human beings or for creatures nowadays. Now, let me show you a video about the magnetic field of the Earth.
Electrons and neutrons are constantly thrown out.
We have a lot of nuclear explosions in the sun, and it causes a lot of what we call solar storm. So all these radiated particles will actually fly towards the Earth, and then
the sun throws out what's known as a coronal mass ejection. This supercomputer visualization shows a cloud of plasma millions of kilometers wide racing towards the Earth. If these solar particles were free to hit the Earth's surface, they would do serious damage to any living thing, producing fatal mutations in their DNA. Fortunately, the Earth has a defense. An invisible force field called the magnetosphere surrounds our planet, visualized here in unprecedented detail. These images are generated by data from 5 magnetically tuned satellites. Called Themis, the network of spacecraft reveals the force field as it is constantly bombarded by the sun. The shape of the field is produced by the sheer force of the radiation hitting it. A nebulous teardrop 200,000 miles in diameter. As wave upon wave of solar particles strike the magnetosphere, most are deflected. But when a coronal mass ejection arrives, the charged particles peel open the magnetic field's outer layer. The particles are now free to rush in towards the planet. The Earth's inner magnetic field steers the radiation towards the poles, triggering one of nature's most remarkable sights. The northern and the southern lights. And here, we can see the Earth's second layer of defense. Giant ribbons of plasma stream downwards, encircling both the north and south poles. As they strike the upper atmosphere at extreme speed, they excite the molecules of air. The process makes the air molecules glow. The oxygen radiates red and green, the nitrogen blue. Energy that would otherwise mutate all life on Earth is dissipated by the upper atmosphere.
So the video shows us 2 things. First, we have the magnetic field. Because inside our Earth, it is still liquid, hot liquid. So it is basically what we call molten. Molten primarily consists of liquid iron at high temperature. So when those liquid iron rotate inside our Earth, it creates like a current, and the current creates a magnetic field. Okay? So this magnetic field behaves like a protective shield, deflecting all the radiation, harmful radiation from the sun. And also, if some of the particles can enter our atmosphere, they will be channeled to the north and the south pole. And all this harmful energy will be dissipated as heat and light. So you can see our Earth is well designed to protect creatures like us, so that we can live in this planet. So if I start with my explanation, so these are the books that I will use. So I will just skip some of these. Let's look at our where we are. This is the Milky Way. So the planet Earth is somewhere here, and in space we use light year as a unit for distance. Light year means the distance that light can travel after 1 year. Okay? So it is, because space is so big. Okay? So it's about 100,000 light year diameter for our Milky Way. If we turn it into billion, it is 0.001 billion light year. And so far, from our understanding, the whole universe has a diameter of about 93 billion light year. Okay, so that's why even Milky Way is a tiny spot in the entire universe. So we saw the video just now. So we are very fortunate in the sense that we are protected with many layers of shields. Besides the magnetic field, besides the atmosphere, we also have the ozone layer. Okay, the ozone layer blocks the UV light, but we have damaged it, so that's why we need to put a lot of sun cream nowadays. Okay, but you can see in creation there are a lot of protective means. We are not very well advanced in technology and scientific knowledge. When the Earth was formed, we have this magnetic field, okay, inside our Earth. But only about 200 years ago, do human beings understand the relationship between current and magnetic field. Okay, so Ampere, the French scientist, is the first one who can relate the relationship between a current and a magnetic field. That means whenever current flows, a magnetic field will be created. Now, in this book written by Professor Hawkins, they talk about a series of scientific concepts, starting from the very old concept about Earth. In the very old days, some people consider our Earth is sitting on the back of a turtle, and for many years we thought that our Earth is the center of the universe. Somehow, people in the past thought we were in the center. But only in 1543, when Copernicus proposed that actually the sun is the center of our solar system, then we realized that we were not at the center of our solar system. Unfortunately, he was persecuted by the church, because at that time the church didn't have the right scientific understanding. And this situation remained the same somehow even in modern times, when scientists do not understand the Bible. It's the same. Okay, so we keep on making a lot of debates without knowing each other's understanding. Now today I will talk about the Friedman's model of our expanding universe. Actually, he's the one who actually initiated the concept of the Big Bang. And then I would spend more time on the Big Bang, the inflationary universe model. Now, here I'll explain what this type of shape means first. Okay? Now, again, only in 1922, a Russian scientist, Friedman, predicted that the universe was not static but expanding. And a few years later, Hubble from Caltech actually discovered that the universe is expanding. We are actually in, as far as we can experience, we are in a 4-dimensional time-space. 3 dimensions are for space, x, y, z. Okay? So 3 dimensions. Time is the 4th dimension. And you may not feel that we are in that container of this 4 dimension, but when we look at a very simple equation, then you can see they are related. Now, a very simple equation is speed is equal to distance divided by time. So when you drive a car or bicycle, or when you run, you have certain speed. Whenever you have speed, that means space and time must be involved. Okay? So now this is a scalar equation. When we want to define the distance in x, y, z, that means besides having the magnitude, we have the direction. Okay? We turn it into vector. So we call the speed velocity, so it has a speed plus a direction, and the distance with a direction and time, okay, divided by time. Now I would explain what this figure means after I explain the Professor Hawkins give his explanation. Now, before we understand we have an expanding universe, for tens of thousands of years, all the philosophers, scientists, believe that we live in a static, closed system. Now, this somehow could affect philosophies. Why? Because if you look at, with the understanding of a static universe, I just quote 2 examples. One very famous philosopher from Greece is Heraclitus. Now, they were born in similar time. Buddha is also born in similar time. If you consider the universe as a closed system, everything must be inside this closed system. Just like imagine if the universe is just the size of this room, we will stay here forever. And if I die, I would become maybe dust, and then somehow I will recycle. Okay? So if you consider the universe, mankind, when mankind look at this and think about our destiny, we can only recycle in this closed system. So Heraclitus came up with an idea. He said that everything is changing. The only constant in the universe is changes. Okay, so that's why he gave a very famous example. He said that whenever you step your foot into a river, it is not the same river again when you put your second step, because the water has changed. Okay? So everything is changing. Only changing is constant. Okay? And everything is recycled in this universe. So everything added together is what we call the term logos. Okay, logos. Now we translate this term into biology, something like that. Okay? Physiology, L-O-G-Y is logos. Okay? That means certain pattern, certain principle, or certain truth. Okay? Now, with the expanding universe, scientists now have a new understanding. So, in his book, he worked with another professor from Cambridge, Roger Penrose. And so they published a paper showing that based on Einstein's general theory of relativity, the universe must have a beginning. Because if you have a Big Bang, if you go back in time, it has to start from a single point, what we call singularity. Okay? That is the time when all the energy, all the universe is confined in tiny point. Okay? Called the singularity. Now, in his book, he used this inverted cone to represent the changes of time and space. So let me explain what this diagram means. We have a 3-dimensional space, and then the 4th dimension is time. But in a diagram like this, I only have 3 dimensions. Okay? So scientists normally use a 2-dimensional surface to represent the size of the universe. Okay? So you can consider now the surface of this circle as the size of the 3 dimensions of space. Okay? So the y-axis here represents time. So imagine if we start explosion somewhere here, at speed of light, space will start to expand. Okay? So after 1 second, this will be the size of the universe. After 2 seconds, this will be the size of the universe. And then, as the time continues to increase, the size of the universe will continue to expand. So that's why they use this inverted cone structure to represent the changes of time and space. Okay? So at the moment, we know that we can only go in one direction in time. Okay? We cannot go back. Now, so what it means is that in this theoretical cone, nothing could happen outside this boundary, because Einstein says that the fastest speed in the universe is the speed of light. Nothing can exceed that speed of light. Okay, so if speed of light starts to expand in all these directions, this will be the limit of our universe. So the universe has a boundary. It's a boundary. Outside that, nothing is not allowed. So far, it's okay. You understand why they use this inverted cone. Now, I want to draw your attention to this point. Theoretically, this should be a very sharp point at the beginning, right? Now, you can see later when scientists talk about this model, this is not a sharp point. Okay, I will explain this. This is an important concept that you have to remember. Okay, so I will explain this. So now let me go back to this diagram. If the expansion of the universe is constant, then we have this vertical cone. But recently, scientists realized that actually the expansion is accelerating. Okay, so that's why instead of having a straight line here, the projection of the size of the universe is expanding. So with the same time, it will expand even faster. Okay, so that's why people now tend to use this shape. Okay, so which is the last one that I will talk about today. Now, after the Big Bang, we have a strong force to expand the universe. It's an explosion, huge explosion. Okay? So a force to push the boundary of the universe. But at the same time, we have the gravity to pull things back. So there has to be a balance. So scientists work out that there has to be a certain, what they call, critical rate of expansion. If the expansion is too fast, the space of the universe will be too great, too large, that all the particles cannot come close together to form stars and planets, because they just become dust, scattered in a very large universe. So when you see this diagram like this, what they are saying is that this is expanding too quickly. So you have an open universe because the space is too much, while the material is too little. Material are too far away, so they cannot, through gravitational force, stick together to form stars and planets. But when the expansion rate is not big enough, the gravitational force will pull things back again. So after the Big Bang, there will be a big crunch. So all things will go back, will collapse to one point again. So what they call a closed universe. Okay, so if you read their book, this is what it means. Okay, so what they suggest is that there has to be a critical rate of expansion. Now, this calculation involves many constants that I cannot explain. I think only a few scientists in the world can explain all these constants. So one of the scientists, Paul Davies is the one who wrote this book, The Mind of God. Now, who is Paul Davies? Paul Davies was a colleague of Professor Hawking at Cambridge. They worked together. So after working out all this, the balance between the expanding force and the contracting force, he said that this system has to be extremely accurate. So accurate that the tolerance is very small. The tolerance is 1/10 to the power 60. What does that mean? 1/10 is 0.1. Okay? So 1/10 to the power 60 means 0. And then you add 59 0 and then 1. Okay? Now, this number is too small for us to understand. So he used an illustration. Remember, the diameter of our universe is about 93 billion light years. The accuracy is as close as you shooting an arrow from one end of the universe to the other end with the accuracy of 1 centimeter. Just like the size of your finger. It has to be that precise. If the expansion is too big, we won't survive. If it is too small, we won't survive. Okay? So it's very precise. So a lot of scientists agree that the universe is fine-tuned for life. So in his book, you can see different models of universe. So if some expand without a sufficient expansion rate, it will collapse. Some of the universe will collapse. And if it's too big, then it will be an open universe. No creature can survive. Even with a universe like this, expanding universe like this, only a few under very strict conditions that living organism can survive. Now, to understand Big Bang, we have to understand based on our daily knowledge. We understand. I'll go back to the Big Bang. But let's look at something that we can understand easily first. Now, imagine if I have a block of ice. Ice is solid. Okay? If I heat it up, when it has more energy, higher temperature, it will melt and become liquid. If I continue to heat it up, the molecule has more energy to escape from their attraction, so it will become steam in a gas form. If I continue to heat it up, even the gas molecule will be decomposed, okay, into plasma. So if I continue to heat it up, even the atom will be decomposed into subatomic particles. Okay? If I continue to heat it up, even subatomic particles will disappear and become energy. Now, the Big Bang is in the opposite direction. Okay? Because at the instant of the Big Bang, scientists predicted that the temperature is extremely high. I will show you the temperature value. It's extremely high that no particle exists. Okay? That's the time where our understanding of law of physics does not apply. There's a certain period that law of physics doesn't apply. When the universe expands, when the volume increases, the average temperature will drop. Okay? So that's why after Big Bang, as the universe expands, you will expect that the subatomic particle will form first, and then later plasma, atom, molecule, and now we have solid like that. Okay. Now, before I go back to the Big Bang, one thing I would like to highlight, because this is related to what is described both in the Big Bang theory and also in the Bible. Now, when we talk about light, what is light? Light is a type of radiation. Now, human eyes can see light from the sun. The sun consists of the most elementary atom in the universe, which is hydrogen. Okay? So, when a hydrogen atom is formed, when an electron, so we know that the electron will orbit around the nucleus of a hydrogen atom. When the electron jumps from the 5th level to the 2nd level, we have the blue light. From the 4th to the 2nd, we have the green, and the 3rd to the 2nd, we have the red light. These are what we call the 3 primary colors. Okay? All colors that we can observe come from the combination of these 3 colors. Okay? If they are of certain proportion, we see the white light, just like we see white light from the sun. Actually, the radiation comes from 3 colors. Okay? Now, this is important because light is only possible when we have this structure. When the temperature is too high, when the electron has too much energy that is not rotating, orbiting in this orbit, there's no light. There's no light. Now, look at Stephen Hawking's book. He has a diagram. Now, what it says, if you have time, go back to this chart. Okay? This is the history, the brief history of time in his book. Now, what he said is the Big Bang starts somewhere here. There's a huge explosion. Now, at this time, the temperature is 10 to the power 32 degrees Celsius. That means 1 plus 32 0. is so high that matter didn't exist. Okay, so during this moment, we have no law of physics. Okay? No scientists understand this. This is the limit of our human intelligence, something that we have to accept. Then, Professor Hawking said, after this period, after about 10 to the power minus 43 seconds, again, that means 0.1, 0 and then 42, 0 plus 1, very small time. Okay? The universe was in a chaotic situation, chaotic state. Okay? In Chinese, we call it wonder. Okay? Chaotic state. Now, as the space, as the universe expands, the volume increases. Okay? So the average temperature starts to drop. So you can see, as the volume expands, the temperature, the average temperature of the universe will start to fall. Okay? And this is not a linear time scale. Okay? So after this period, when the temperature drops, then the subatomic particles start to form. But they still have a lot of energy because the temperature was so hot that they have so much energy that they cannot stick together. Okay? Now after 10 to the power minus 10 seconds, the temperature dropped to 10 to the power 15 degrees Celsius. Here, in this period, proton, neutron start to form. Because where the temperature has dropped, the matter start to form. But they still have a lot of energy moving around in random, chaotic manner. Okay? So we do not have the atomic structure of hydrogen. Now, after about 3 minutes, we start to have some radiation. But the matter and radiation couple together. Okay? So that means radiation, they are still confined, stick together, mixed together. Now, after about 300,000 years, he said matter and radiation decouple. That means the atomic structure can be formed because of the lower temperature. And only at this time, radiation can escape. That means we have light. So that means in the early stage, we don't have light because all the electrons have so much energy that they are not falling into those orbits around this nucleus. They have too much energy to fly around. Okay? And then after the universe cool down, then we start to have matters, and then the solar system, different systems start to form in the universe. Now, in Hawking's book, he emphasized one point. He said that his theory doesn't involve God. Now, his statement is correct. His theory doesn't involve God. Because, remember, between time 0 and time 10 to the power minus 43 seconds, law of physics doesn't apply. Okay, so that's why his theory doesn't involve this part. We start from here. Okay, start from 0 plus. So his theory doesn't require God to ignite this Big Bang. You understand his statement now? Okay, so be careful when you listen to what he said. Okay? It doesn't mean that we don't need someone to ignite the Big Bang. But his theory, which starts at 0 plus, not at 0. That's why his theory doesn't need God. Okay? Now, let's look at the statement from his book. In his book, he collects a lot of modern scientific understanding of the universe, the formation of the universe. Some is about the initial state, and some about the formation of our Earth. Okay, so let's look at his description. He said the universe started out from the Big Bang in a very hot but rather chaotic state. Now, I will talk about, I'll compare this with the Bible later, okay? But so the initial state, he said it is chaotic, as we explained here. Okay? He used the term chaotic for the initial state. But about the formation of our Earth, he gives a lot of very detailed explanation. Even nowadays, inside our Earth, it's still liquid, hot liquid. So initially, our planet is, if you like, a lump of hot fluid. Fluid means things that can flow. A fluid is a technical term. Now, the Bible uses the term waters with an S. Waters, that means something can flow. So nowadays, scientists use the term fluid to represent things that can flow. It could be gas, it could be liquid. Okay, so fluid means it could be gas or liquid. So inside our Earth, it is still hot liquid at the moment. But in the past, and it was a lot hotter, it is basically a lump of hot fluid. Okay? So what they describe is, as the universe continues to expand, the average temperature starts to drop. So those water molecules, which were steam in the past, which was steam when the temperature was high, when it starts to cool down, water will drop. And water will start to cool down the surface of the Earth to form land. Now we call this the crust, the Earth crust. Even nowadays, the Earth crust is very thin compared to the diameter of the Earth. So in some way, we are like orange. The skin of the orange is like the crust. Inside, it is still liquid. Okay? Then he said, in those days, initially, we don't have an atmosphere that we now have, because we have all this hot gas. This gas basically comes from, it's like the gas that we can see from a volcano. It is toxic, brownish, or dark gas. Okay, so we do not have a clear atmosphere. And this atmosphere has no oxygen. Then, as we start to have water, scientists now believe that the first primitive form of life comes from the ocean. Okay? Those algae, okay? They absorb carbon dioxide, toxic gas, and then they generate oxygen. Okay? So we have plant algae and different type of plants and trees, green plants and green trees first, because they serve the purpose of photosynthesis. They will absorb all the toxic gas from the atmosphere, generate oxygen, which is transparent. Then gradually we will have our atmosphere that can sustain life. Okay, so they said that the first primitive form actually consume all this toxic gas like hydrogen sulfide, and then they release oxygen. And after that, we have now gradually changed the atmosphere to the composition that it has today. And with this atmosphere, with oxygen, various forms of life start to appear, starting from fish, reptile, mammal, and finally, mankind. But remember the sequence. We have all the hot gas, then water, and then land, and then we form the ocean. With the ocean, fish didn't come out first. It is the algae, the green plant. Okay? Remember the green plant first, because we need photosynthesis to generate oxygen. After that, the first life form that can move come from the sea. Take the fish first, and then reptile. They get from the ocean to the ground. Okay? And then mammal, and then human being. So this is what they talk about the atmosphere with all these toxic gas. And here we still have a lot of hot liquid inside our Earth. Now, I'm going to now show you the first chapter of the book of Genesis. But before I do that, I want to emphasize one thing. The book of Genesis was written in a poetic language. It is not meant for scientists. Okay? You understand what I mean? So we are not talking about certain physical constant equations. Okay? It gives you a general description in a poetic way. Now, this is the first 26 verses. You cannot see. Okay? So let's look at the first 5 verses. Okay? I put it in both Chinese and English, just in case you want to read the Chinese. Okay? Now, what it starts is that there's a beginning. The Bible said there's a beginning. Now, with the expanding universe, now scientists thought there's a beginning. He said, God created heavens and earth. That means everything, the universe. And look at this. This universe was formless and empty initially. Now, the Chinese word used chaos, chaotic, which is the term chosen by Professor Hawking. Okay? And then there was darkness over the surface. There was no light initially. And then God said, let there be light. And there was light. But you can see this interesting statement. He said, he separated the light from darkness. Now, for many years, I didn't understand what it means. How can God separate light from darkness? Interesting, right? Now, go back to Stephen Hawking's brief history of time. In the beginning, God created the world. God kickstarted the Big Bang. And it was chaotic, formless, for the initial state. Now, radiation starts at this point when the temperature starts to drop, but matter and radiation couple together. So light is still trapped, coupled with matter. Light cannot come out yet. Why? Because remember what I said about the three primary color? The three primary color, the red, green, and blue light, can only come out when you have the hydrogen atomic structure. When the electron is orbiting around the nucleus of a hydrogen atom, and when it falls from one level to another level, then you have light. But when the temperature was too high initially, all the electrons has too much energy that they can fly around. They are not trapped into the orbit. So light was trapped. Okay? Only when the temperature cool down more, when you have the atomic structure, then electron can jump from one orbit to the other orbit because they cool down now. They will be trapped in those discrete orbits. Then we have light. And that's how light can be separated from darkness. Because initially on the surface, all the radiation is still trapped, coupled with matter, according to the description. So far, only day one. Okay? Now, so in Chinese, if you look at Chinese, it's the same. Okay? So you can look at this sequence. Now, from day two means the waters to separate water from water. That means different type of fluid are now separated. Okay? The lighter gas stay on the top, the heavier gas start to fall, and then we start to have this atmosphere. Now, the water, look at the sequence of our Earth. Now, day one is about the initial stage of the universe. But from day two onwards, the Bible was written for mankind. Okay, so it is about our Earth now. It talks about the water under the sky gathered first. And then the land is formed. And after the land is formed, we have the vegetation, plants, seed-bearing plants and trees. And after that, we have light, the sun, and we can see the sun and the moon. And then when we have life form, we come from water, we have birds, and we have creatures on the ground, and finally mankind. Now remember the sequence about our creation in the book written by Stephen Hawking. Are the sequences the same? Okay. When the universe continues to expand and the temperature starts to cool down, the water vapor in the atmosphere turns into water. So we cool the surface of the land or of our Earth to form the crust. So land is formed. With land, then the water can gather together to form ocean. With ocean, fish didn't come first. It is the vegetation. Why? Because the green plant do the photosynthesis, absorb all the toxic gas from the atmosphere, generate oxygen, which is transparent, which is clean. And after that formation of a transparent atmosphere, we can see the sun and the moon. And then the life form comes from water. After life form comes from water, we have the reptiles, and then things start to move on the ground, and finally, we have mankind. Now, pay attention to a verse. Whenever the Bible talks about other creatures, the Bible just say according to the kinds. It is plants according to the kinds. If it is sea creatures of the sea, also according to the kind. Animals moving on the ground, God make them according to their kinds. And for mankind, it is in God's image. Now we'll talk about that in the question time. Okay, if you are interested about it. So this is a Chinese version. Okay, again, you can see the same sequence. So what modern scientists discover about the initial stage of the Big Bang, about the formation, the sequence of the formation of our Earth and the life forms, are basically within the framework of the book of Genesis in chapter 1. But what's special about this? Professor Hawking did his first degree in Oxford. He got his PhD in Cambridge. Moses wrote down, he was inspired by God to write the book of Genesis 3,400 years ago without our modern knowledge. He has no high school education, no university education. That is special. Whether you like it or not, this is special. How can a person 3,000 years ago, without modern knowledge, without knowing what a bacteria is, what a virus is, what an atom is, how can Moses wrote the book of Genesis with this framework that even modern discovery fall within? Now, Stephen Hawking also made in his last book, the Grand Design, he suggested he has a new discovery. So in 2011, he said this. He said, because gravity is attractive, gravitational energy is negative. On the scale of the entire universe, the positive energy of the matter can be balanced by the negative energy, negative gravitational energy. So there is no restriction on the creation of the whole universe because there's a law like gravity. The universe can create itself from nothing. And then he draws to one conclusion. He said, it is not necessary to invoke God to set the universe going. The reason he said, if this is all the energy of the matter in the universe, and this is the total negative energy of the gravitational force, these two added together is zero. So his new conclusion is the universe can be created from nothing. This is his latest, the conclusion in the last chapter of his last book. But St. Paul in the book of Romans said that this is talking about Abraham. Abraham believed in a God, and this God gives life to the dead, and this God calls into being that were not. So in Chinese, Abraham believed a God. This God can bring that person to life, and he can turn nothing, he can make something from nothing. The Jewish people knew about this a few thousand years ago, that God created the universe from nothing. And if you look at the original word, the first sentence in the Bible, in the beginning, God created the world. This word created in the Hebrew word is bara. Bara means creation from nothing. Okay, so the Bible has this conclusion in the first sentence, written down 3,400 years ago. And this is also the latest discovery by Professor Hawking. Now, the Bible is not a scientific book, but it has a lot of description about our universe. For example, God actually hanged our earth over nothing. Okay, we don't have a connection between the sun and our earth. Okay, we are rotating in vacuum. Okay, it's gravitational force that hold us together. Relativity. For God, a day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years is like a day. Because if this creator can create the three-time dimension, the three space dimension and the time dimension, he's not restricted by his creation. Okay? He can move around. Because before we have the time domain, there was no time. So that's why when before Moses received the Ten Commandments from the Mount Sinai, in the Bible, he asked God, what is your name? Now, the English translation is that, I am who I am. I am who I am. The Chinese translation is, I exist from eternity. Okay, I'm not restricted by time, so that's why I'm all I'm I'm who I am. There's no past, no future. He's not restricted in the time domain because he created the time domain. Okay? So we have to understand his nature. So there are also other descriptions about expanding universe. Here there are two verses which describe God stretch the whole universe, okay? Stretch out the heavens like a canopy. So now we can see the discoveries of an expanding universe, the Earth formation, and the sequence of life form based on modern science are within the framework in the book of Genesis. Now, when I was young in the 1970s, I heard a lot of debates between scientists and religious leaders. I found that there are a lot of tendency on both sides to make mistakes. The scientists think that they can use science to prove or to disprove the existence of God. And then the religious leader think, I don't need any proof. I just believe. Okay? But I think we need to understand more about the limitation of each side. Now let me just use this as one example. Again, let me emphasize, the Bible is not a scientific book, it's a poetic literature. So in the first chapter, if you look at the structure of the book of Genesis, chapter 1, basically God split the creation into 6 periods. Okay? For the first day, the light, the water, sky, and the land. And gradually, from a chaotic state, he set orders. Okay? For example, even when he created trees, plants, mammals, reptiles, he used the term according to their kinds. That means there are certain rules. It could be a DNA structure, it could be the biological rules. There are certain rules that would guide all these creatures to occupy, to survive. So from a chaotic state to an ordered state, this is the purpose of chapter 1. But if you look at, just use one example to compare science and the Bible. Now, mankind use various ways to predict future. The most common way is superstition. Okay, people look for a fortune teller. Okay, in the Western culture, in the Eastern culture, they exist in different forms. Okay, so, and usually it is for personal interest and they are speculations. Science is much better. Science forecasts various things like the economy, climate changes, the changes of the universe, and usually they are for collective interest. But one thing we have to remember, science is never the truth. Science is always an approximation to the truth. You can see now even the Big Bang theory, even the so-called grand theory, scientists have been evolving in correcting their mistakes. Okay? Even the number pi will never know up to the last digit. Okay? We have a limit. Science is always an approximation to the truth, and it's never the truth. I can build a model to represent certain things, and remember it is a model under certain assumptions. Okay? So remember the nature of science. Science is an approximation to the truth. But the Bible is very strange. Whether you believe it or not, the God that it described say that He is the truth, and He is the absolute truth. Now I'll raise a few more points later about this point. Okay, so you can see in the Bible, so far some theologians have done the statistics. In the Bible, there are about 2,500 prophecies. Prophecies are those predictions of what happened in mankind, particularly through the history of the Jewish state, Israel. So far, 2,000 of them have been fulfilled. Again, whether you like it or not. Say, just like in 1948, Israel was re-established after being destroyed for 2,600 years. Whether you like Israel or you don't like Israel, it came back as a nation in 1948. And it was predicted thousands of years ago in the Bible. Okay, so far, 2,000 out of 2,500 prophecies have been fulfilled. Now, what's the truth? We have two approaches. One is called human-centered approach, and one is called God-centered approach. Now, we have many famous philosophers I admire them because they spend their time not to make themselves wealthy or powerful. They spend their lifetime searching for the truth. And in their different time frames, different culture, and different countries, based on many years of their experience, they try to search for the truth in various ways and develop their systems of this truth. But I ask one question. Why did they search for the truth? The reason is that they are not the truth. If I'm the truth, I need to search for the truth. You understand my point? Then when I read the Bible, it's very strange. The Bible, when Jesus came, he declared that I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. Now many philosophers start to write down their understanding when they're at the old age, after many years of life experience, many years of culture. Okay? Jesus came out at the age of 30, according to the practice of the Old Testament. Only at the age of 30 that you can start to preach. He just declared that I'm the truth. He's not searching for the truth. You see the difference? Okay? So then, when you look at the Bible, it's very strange. This truth, in the beginning, was the word which brought the truth. This truth is not a philosophy. This truth is God Himself. Now, that started to change my understanding of what truth is. So what the Bible said is that God is the truth. Whatever He expressed is the truth. So when He inspired the Bible writers to write down the books, this is the truth. And when the Word become flesh, become human being in the form of Jesus, come here, He's the truth. Okay, so the Bible's truth is quite different from our philosophers' truth. Okay? For philosophers, we use a bottom-up approach. Use our time, our understanding to think what this truth is. Because they search for the truth, because they are not the truth. But the Bible, Jesus didn't do that. He just said, I'm the truth. Now, either he's lying or he's true. Okay? It's a question we have to answer. Okay? So, and then you look at what he said. Quite interesting. So, here, if you look at the structure of the Bible about God and His creation, I use this chart to help us understand more. In eternity, there's no time. Okay? So here, the Bible said, God created the world, so we have the time and space domain here. And in the time and space, also material, not only material, but intelligence. This is important because when people talk about materialism, they only believe things that appear in material form. But now we know DNA is a material. But DNA is a coded program, according to Bill Gates. But DNA's program is so complicated that human beings cannot understand yet. Okay, so that means behind material, there's intelligence. It's not just material. There's intelligent being who can write this program. If DNA is a very complicated program, there must be a programmer. And this programmer must be very intelligent because DNA contains intelligence. So there must be intelligent being behind the created material. So why in the Bible is quite different. It's not the bottom-up approach, it's the up-down, top-down approach. There's a reason for that I will explain very soon. Now in the Bible it said God actually has to reveal Himself to mankind. He gives us the ability to generate different disciplines of knowledge. And science is only one branch of discipline, and only for the physical world. Now let me explain this point. There are many things which is not material. For example, can you use a ruler or thermometer to measure the love of your parents for you? You can't. Okay? Because love is not material. Understand? So we cannot use any scientific method to say whether a poem is good or bad. If you read Jimo's poem, can you carry a ruler or thermometer to check the poem is good or bad? No. So outside the material world, the physical world, the scientific language is meaningless. Okay? So that's why a lot of scientists do not understand the limits, the limitation of science, and think that I can use science to contain God. If you can explain God, this is not a God. Okay? So we have to understand the limitation of science. So it is, to me, it is meaningless to say that I use science to prove or disprove the existence of God, because science itself is so limited. I can't even use it to predict the temper of my wife tonight when I go home. Okay? I cannot use it for anything outside the physical world. Now, so science is only one of the many disciplines, and science cannot prove or disprove the existence of God. But science can allow us to see the wonders of creation. Now, I now use this photo to help me explain what revelation means. Now, this was my dog. Unfortunately, he passed away 2 years ago. But I took him to a school. He got a certificate. Well trained, very clever. But no matter how clever she was, when I listen to music, when I do my research, I would not explain it to her. Because she has limited intelligence. Mankind is of a higher level in terms of intelligence. Right? So, according to the Bible, mankind is on the top level of all the creatures. We have the best intelligence among all the created beings. Okay? So, that's why there are many things she would never understand. But yet, I can teach her something that she would not do out of her normal nature. For example, if I drop food, well, like any other dog like to eat. Okay? Now I can teach her to eat food if I drop it on the floor. But she's not allowed to eat any food from my table. Okay? I've trained her to do this. Of course, occasionally she fails, but most of the time she listens. So she can do things, understand things that her normal nature wouldn't allow her to understand. So when we pass knowledge from a higher level of intelligence to a lower level, this is called revelation. Okay? So we have to understand that if we are, even at the top level of intelligence, we are created beings, we have limited intelligence. It will be impossible for us to fully understand this creator if he exists. Okay? Otherwise, we will be the creator. Okay? We can create a false God out of our mind, but we cannot understand a true creator who created us, because he is of a higher level of intelligence, and he's a source of intelligence. Okay, so we have to understand our limitations. So the Bible said there are two ways of revelation. One is a general revelation. When you look at nature, when you see the beauty of nature, then you see there's a creator behind. And then a special revelation is the word become flesh, and the God inspired his word. Now I have to move a bit faster. Okay, so if you look at the Bible, we talk about reveal. So God doesn't ask us to search for him. He reveals himself to us. Okay? So you can see that is revelation. So another question I ask is, can human ideology affect the existence or non-existence of God? Look at this statement. If God exists, he will not exist more because I believe in him. And he will not exist less because I don't believe in him. And if he doesn't exist, it doesn't really matter what I think. He won't exist more. He won't exist less. Okay? So whether God exists or not, strictly speaking, does not depend on how I feel. And many people think, I believe in God, I don't believe in God, as if I'm the one who make the decision. But objectively, if you think about that, if this God exists, it doesn't really matter how I think about him. He will exist. And if he doesn't exist, it doesn't really matter how I think about him. He won't exist. Right? So the next question is, so if what we think, so that's why there's a lot of atheist ideology. Mankind can generate a lot of godless ideology. It's the same approach, I believe or I don't believe. So what I'm trying to say is, take away you as a subject first. Look at the evidence. The evidence doesn't lie in science. The Bible tells us that actually God revealed himself through his involvement in the history of mankind. So he actually chose Israel, the state of Israel, as a teaching aid, as a teaching tool, to reveal himself to the world. So if you look at some of his expressions, I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient time. What is still to come? I say, my purpose will stand. I will do all that I please. Okay? So that's why he has already mentioned many things, and many of them have been fulfilled. Doesn't really matter what we believe. It's according to what God teaches or not. If he wants to do it, he will do it. Doesn't really matter how we do it. Okay. Now, in the early stage of the Bible, actually, he predicted when Adam and Eve made mistakes. They were expelled from the Garden of Eden. God has already prepared salvation. Okay? And it takes over 3,400 years before Jesus came. Okay? But it has been predicted. And the salvation. So God actually chose his people and involved in mankind to reveal himself. And then he told the Israelites, I give you a choice, a blessing or a curse. Blessing if you obey me, and curse if you don't. Okay? And then there are many prophecies about, for example, the birth of Jesus. About 681 years before Jesus was born, it was prophesied that a virgin will give birth to a son. It's a virgin. And this son will come from Bethlehem. And this Savior will be despised and rejected by mankind. He will take up our pain. And he will be pierced for transgression. Pierced means with a nail going through your hand. For our transgression means for our sins, for our wickedness. Okay, so it also predicted already that he will be pierced by nail. And then he will suffer. He will not complain. He will not open his mouth. And God the Father actually used him as a sacrifice for the sin of mankind. So these are the scriptures I just put in. But more importantly, it's about the reestablishment of Israel. Now, Israel was separated into two kingdoms, the north and the south. Okay? They were destroyed about 580 BC. Okay? But God, before they were destroyed, God already told them that because they disobeyed God, they will be wanderers among nations. So they will be scattered over different nations. And Jerusalem will be a heap of ruins. And they will be scattered. So God will drive them among all nations. Okay? They will be an object of horror, scorn, and reproach. And if you look at the history of Israel, you can see how much suffering they have received because they disobeyed God. But God also said that one day God will gather them and bring them back. Okay? He will bring back Israel back from exile. Only one religion in the world has this prophecy fulfilled. Now, when Israel was destroyed, in China, this is a Chen Chou era. We have many small countries in the China region. Okay? They all disappeared. The languages disappeared. Only one nation in the world, after being destroyed for 2,600 years, can be re-established according to the prophecy. And they can preserve their language and their scripture, their Bible. Only one. religion in the world at this policy. So if you look at Abraham, when God approached Abraham, he promised them a few things. All the nations will be blessed through your descendant, which talk about Jesus. Now, Abraham never saw all this fulfillment, but he believed. God promised him that he will have a land and a country. So the land come only when Joshua get into Canaan, which is now the state of Israel. Okay? So they were a few hundred years later. Okay? And even God told him that his people will suffer in a foreign land for 400 years. So they become slavery in Egypt. So whatever God said, whether you like it or not, it will come true. So this is quite fascinating. Again, the destruction of Israel at different times, the North Kingdom and the South Kingdom, and the fulfillment of Jesus' first coming, the fulfillment of the reestablishment of Israel. And there will be a prophecy that Jesus will come again to judge people. So to summarize, we can see that the expanding universe, the sequence of Earth formation, they are all within the framework of the book of Genesis. And science has limitation. Okay? It cannot prove the existence of God. And actually, God revealed himself. So my final point is that the Bible revealed that this God is the essence of the absolute truth. Whatever he expressed is also the truth. And whatever he says, whether you like it or not, when I look at the Bible, it's very straight. Whatever he says, it will happen. And it does not require my understanding. It doesn't need my agreement. And it doesn't really matter whether I like it or believe it. It will happen. But with this, I end my presentation. I welcome questions. I also welcome very challenging questions.
Okay.
I won't give you a dishonest answer. If I don't know the answer, I will let you know.
So thank you, Professor Ron Hui. You may take a seat, and then now come.